So this is where the financial economy kicks in. We know that if you were to just purely do everything on the basis of cash, as it were, it would be slow and we would be at a disadvantage. Why? People say, oh, it's a debt-based economy and all this sort of stuff. Actually, the fact that we have tax and debt allows you to have what's called a tax shield means that you're almost encouraged to have debt because it gives you a tax benefit. And so even you'll find that some of the richest people, they don't need to take out debt. They still take out debt because it actually enhances their yield. So, we're a non-Muslim country. We're in a country with lots of taxes. We have to recognize that. So building the Muslim financial ecosystem is just as important to supply the fuel of growth in the real economy. So what that looks like is we need Islamic banks that do full service offerings in Sharia compliant ways that we don't have today. So, like SME finance, trade finance, helping Muslims export. So I think they'd be very good at that.
Even just
in a Sharia compliant
business
way.
bank accounts.
Business bank accounts. That's what I mean by the SME, kind of helping small businesses. How do we construct products that allow us to fund their capex? Where they do not just the building. We're very good at real estate, right? Still got to go a bit more. But what if the individual wants to buy a machine? To double his production. Quite hard to do Islamically here, even though like leasing inherently should be quite easy to do. So, mashallah, I think many industry practitioners have got together. There are various groups where we're working to, for example, change things like the Consumer Credit Act to allow more Islamic products so that we can do leasing, etc., etc. Takaful, as opposed to insurance. There's a whole host of pieces to be done. But we do need scale, and the Muslim pound to be virtuous cyclically, as I mentioned, people have to kind of almost support their investments into the Muslim sector. Let's take pensions. I'm sure some of your previous speakers may have spoken about this, but look at where the majority of Muslim pensions are. They're all with the HSBC Global Tracker. Not saying that's a bad thing, at least there's a Sharia compliant option there. But where does that money go? It's invested in Apple and Microsoft and Google. It's largely tech stocks. That's not supporting our local communities. That's not necessarily supporting Muslims. Some of those entities we know are, helping companies in the war sector, as we know, without getting too much into that. And so it's like, well, that's where my pension money has gone, and it's significant. You just look at the balance sheet of HSBC Global Index Tracker from just the UK alone. So we again, as an industry, small efforts, planting seeds, are trying to say to government, let's and encourage other private sector offerings which are more directed at UK stocks and shares or UK enterprise, local government pension schemes. People who work in local government, look at boroughs in London, look at places like Birmingham. They have huge amount, thousands and thousands of Muslim employees. Yeah, where does their pension money go? It's a big deduction. Goes out to a fund, straight off to these other funds. Where does it go back to support Muslim entrepreneurs, local businesses? So there's a lot of work just in the financial side because the wealth's there. Just imagine the £10 billion that might be at HSBC Global Tracker, all gone to US stocks. If even a billion of it was directed to support Muslim entrepreneurs build bigger businesses, that the real economy then is linking into the financial economy, into your pension. Some of that money was helping to finance people like Offer to do more finance for you. Again, it's working. So I'm just making a high level picture, because we could go into every sector. We could talk about health. We could talk about this and try and picture the future.
So do you think a lot of funding should go in nurturing Muslim founders, especially the younger one, Gen Zs, who have this ethical mindset, rather than back in the day when they used to push people in become a doctor, accountant, lawyer. Do you think a lot of it should now go towards building something which is ethical and maybe building a pension fund and other products, not just financial, outside the financial market as well?
So how do we take the good aspects of I guess hustle culture and the good aspects, but I think it can overwhelm our spiritual aspects, but let's take the good aspects of that and say, oh, how can we support people? First, it's a two-way street, and what I mean by that is money alone is not enough. Money without values, money without, let's call it mentorship, money without supporting these people, it should be backed up with a big picture or a spiritual dimension. So I think it's not unconditional. The money needs to. I think if we could tap some of this pension wealth, or set up more funds that directly support these businesses, but they also assess those businesses. That those Gen Zs who are setting them up either have a high ceiling for potential, not just in a business sense, that their character can also be developed, and that they've got the baseline for good character. So that's what I mean by conditionality. It's not just doing what the conventional sector might do. Oh, here's a fund. It's like an early stage venture capital fund. Let's go and find Gen Z hustlers, and help them make money, and we'll make money. Right? It cannot be so superficial.
Yeah.
It's got to be imbued with mentorship, and a values, and for us, obviously, an Islamic values-based philosophy.
So, when it comes to building these ethical or Islamic value businesses, you have people like yourself who can provide that mentorship. You have people, for example, Ibrahim Khan and Kuray, Omar Sulaiman and Wahid. This is just a very small fraction of the financial service industry. So do you think it is possible to then have experts or mentors like yourself guiding the younger generation towards the right direction?
Absolutely. There will be a bandwidth issue. So we've got to use modern tools and techniques, right? So first of all, I think other than just what I call educational, YouTube, social media videos, that's all very motivational. But people need practical frameworks. There'll be a capacity constraint on all the people you just mentioned in terms of mentoring.
Yeah.
So they can do a video, they can outline stuff. How do we systemize it in such a way that we can scale it such that any Gen Z entrepreneur can avail themselves of a framework that underpins their business? So what we need to be doing through an umbrella organization, and there are a few out there that could potentially do it, such as River Free Foundation, for example, where we supply a framework for any budding entrepreneur, which is I think people like Mufti Faraz, for example, talk about Sharia-powered framework. And that's far more all-encompassing than what people call ESG, environmental, social, and governance frameworks, because it embodies the Sunnah and the Sharia. So if you take a framework like that, and hopefully I'll be working with Mufti Saab on trying to convert his fantastic concept, his conceptual framework right now, into a practical framework, and then making it available to anybody who wants to base their business on a Sharia-powered basis, right?
It'd be better, or do you think it's better to have a side-by-side, to have like a Waqf or endowment system where you're not just relying on zakat donations, you're just generating the income from either properties or other investments to then give to these people who are in need?
Yeah, so just two things. There's a mismatch of demand and supply, right? The supply of zakat in this country is outweighed by the demand, right? So just give you an example. NZF helps about 2,000 people in the UK every month, but there's about 12,000 applications for zakah. So there's a need, first of all, to highlight that more zakat should come to local causes, right? I think we've got to make sure that happens. And there's plenty of zakat, like you said, a lot of it goes abroad. If you look historically, zakah worked hand in hand with waqf. One didn't replace the other, and financial sustainability is really important. So even for NZF, we have costs that we bear. For example, the infrastructure of zakah. I have to get that through my gift aid, or I have to ask for sadaqah. But we need to really have a waqf to support like the overheads. And similarly, I was involved in a Mercy Mission project called Waqfinity, where the idea was to bring waqf home to the individual. If you talk to the average Muslim, what is waqf? I mean, we could do a survey at it, right? They're gonna, first they may not understand it, but even if they understand it, the masjid's got something like a waqf for, it's like some old buildings.
That's the one was when you see it in the Quran and it just says waqf.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's it. The Quran waqf. Yeah. The printing of Quran. And so, if there's anything that we did achieve a Waqfinity, and we bought a couple of buildings and a waqf was formed, and inshallah we'll bring it back. Was the concept of this? How do we take waqf and make it personal to you? So Zaid, you could have a waqf. You don't have to be Bill Gates to have a foundation. Why don't you have a waqf? And we use digital, the digital landscape, whether that's blockchain or through just fractionalization, where you don't have to set up deeds, trusts, foundations, charities, that you can have a waqf, that you can see the benefits of that waqf with full transparency. So you put in £1,000. What does a waqf do? It invests it in the background. It's very much like what I do in business. It invests it. And then there's a return, right? So say you bought property and there was a 10% yield. You don't see that 10% yield coming into your account, your waqf account. And then you don't see necessarily that 10% was then allocated to elderly care or drug abuse problems or something you selected that you wanted your waqf to do. If you look historically, right, we obviously know about, Hazrat Uthman's waqf, right? But, waqf were very advanced in the Ottoman Empire. There was a waqf that looked after cats. I think there is to this day in Istanbul. There was a waqf where a waiter in a restaurant accidentally broke a plate, which he would have to come out of his salary. There was a waqf that paid for that. Right? Obviously, hospitals and musafir khanas, travelers' inns, they were waqfs. And so I think it's very much time to revive the waqf. I think, some of the issues that we talked about earlier about longevity and time frame is a big obstacle. You're talking to a guy who's tried to sell waqf in a positive sense. When I say encourage people to donate to waqf. It is so hard.
Because it goes back to the first thing you said about immediate gratification.
Immediacy, right? They'll say, you're saying, Sultan, I put £1,000 in, and only £50 is going to go to the cause. But it's potentially £50, brother, forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, or perpetuity to the extent that waqf survives. But the £1,000 could help somebody now. So then I have to kind of change the argument with that brother or sister and saying, let's look at your giving as like a wallet. How much is zakah? It's obligatory. It has to be distributed within 11 and a half calendar months or 12 Islamic months. There's your sadaqah. There's sadaqah jariyah that's going to benefit you after your death. And within sadaqah jariyah, there could be waqf. Are you not thinking about perpetuity? So after you go, it will help you, right? That's the benefit of waqf.